is Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the left and Tory wets continue to oppose Superwoman Suala's mission to stop the boats as the usual suspects ignore the Rwanda plan's power to deter criminals crossing the channel and focus on its irrelevant costs.
So what is the number the SNP would have?
It's not about a number. You can fix this by safe and legal routes.
But does that sound like value for money? £169,000 per person?
No, I don't think it does.
I'll explain why these champagne socialist lawyers and Labour activists frustrating the will of the people are the ones putting lives at risk in my digest next. They're my superstar panel weigh-in, and tonight I'm joined by Amanda Platel, Kelvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Also coming up, the TV industry goes into meltdown as GB News Breakfast and Nigel Farage beat the MSM's lefty lovies to win at the prestigious Trick Awards.
I'm certain that 3 GB News presenters would not have been in the shortlist of 5, which should be very instructive for the whole industry. You see, the investors, please do keep the abuse coming.
Their disdain for you, the voting viewers, couldn't be clearer. And Nigel will join me live to reveal all about the day's extraordinary events shortly. Also on the way, the Sussex's Hollywood horror show goes from bad to worse as a powerful celebrity agent launches a brutal takedown of the couple in Cannes. But is Jeremy Zimmer right to say that Meghan lacks talent? Lady Victoria Harvey and Amy Ansell do battle on that in The Clash. And Zimmer is just one in a long line of top media execs and famous faces queuing up to slam Harry and Meghan.
Wish I'd been involved in the Meghan and Harry leave Spotify negotiation. The f***ing grifters.
I think Harry's a
Ladies and gentlemen, I do 12 episodes in my sleep.
So, should Netflix follow Spotify's lead and drop the toxic Sussexes? Star US journalist Megyn Kelly returns to deliver her scathing stateside verdict. Plus, as their Californian dream collapses, Tom Bower will reveal how Harry and Meghan are now taking advice from the ghost of Princess Diana. Don't miss that Bower bombshell later in the show. Also coming up, as the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death concludes, finding that her death was accidental, did Lancashire Police do enough to find that tragic mum of two? Well, former detective turned investigative journalist Mark Williams-Thomas, he's been at the inquest. He's going to offer his exclusive insight. And this morning's daytime dominance has ended in the wake of the Philip Schofield scandal as the lifestyle show A Place in the Sun pips the troubled show to a trick gong.
Father Brown and This Morning. And the winner of the OK Daytime is A Place in the Sun.
Lucky Ollie Willoughby decided to swerve this particular awards ceremony. I'll tell you more about that in the media buzz later. We'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you on the way too. And a new Greatest Britain Union jackass crowned as well. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Now, we've got a packed show for you tonight, but I just wanted to start by telling you about the Conservative London mayoral finalist Daniel Korski, who turns out to be a gutless little weasel who decided to snub this show and you tonight. So it's true, Korski is under fire at the moment after the TV producer Daisy Goodwin accused the former David Cameron advisor of groping her in Number 10. Now, earlier this week, he'd actually lobbied to come on this show. We agreed to give him a chance live tonight, even though I'm very sceptical about his policies. But when the going got tough, Korski bottled it. He's given a ridiculous pre-recorded interview to a little-watched establishment TV reporter tonight instead. Now, while deciding that he doesn't have to explain himself to you. The scandal he's embroiled in, by the way, pretty much finishes off his chances anyway, but I think Londoners have seriously dodged a bullet here. That's because Korski is the ultimate Tory wet who has been endorsed by Boris backstabber Michael Gove and woke Penny Mordaunt. He openly admits he isn't a traditional Conservative and campaigned for Remain. As you saw, the chair is there, it's available. Korski, you agreed to come on tonight. So if you want to do so, be here in the next 2 hours to actually face some difficult questions about what went on live. But I'm not going to hold my breath. And as I say, I do think London has probably swerved a very woke mayor here. My digest on the left's Rwanda lies in just a moment. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight on GB News. The inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded the mother of two died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr James Aidley told the inquest Nicola Bulley fell into cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst out walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later. Lancashire Police said today it hopes the inquiry will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. Well, in other news today, Matt Hancock criticised the UK's pandemic planning before COVID hit, saying it was completely wrong. The former Health Secretary told the COVID inquiry that planning was focused on whether or not there were enough body bags rather than stopping the virus taking hold. He says it was a colossal failure to assume the spread of the virus couldn't be stopped and that he was profoundly sorry for every death. Hospital consultants in England are to walk out next month in a dispute over pay. Members of the British Medical Association voted in favour of strikes on the 20th and 21st of July unless a credible offer was made. Meanwhile, nurses' strikes have ended after a ballot for further industrial action failed to meet the legal 50% threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says only 43% cast their vote in the ballot. But the Health Secretary today said he's ready to work with nurses going forward.
We reached a deal with the NHS Staff Council that the majority of trade unions agreed to. I'm pleased that the RCN have now ended their industrial action and we stand ready to work in partnership with the NHS Staff Council as a whole, but also with the RCN. There are a number of aspects of our deal with the Agenda for Change unions. We continue to work with them and we stand ready to do so with the RCN.
Well, in news away from home, the Belarusian president says Wagner Group boss Yevgeny Prigozhin is now in Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko had previously offered the mercenary chief a relocation deal to his country, helping to end Saturday's march on Moscow. Wagner troops were told they could either join the Russian army, move to Belarus with their leader, or return to their families. And that comes as the Kremlin says Vladimir Putin's position was not shaken by the attempted mutiny. And as you've been hearing, GB News picked up double trick awards today. GB News Breakfast won multi-channel news programme of the year, beating off established news outlet morning offerings. And Nigel Farage was awarded News Presenter of the Year, much to the surprise of the seated guests at the glittering afternoon ceremony at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello evidently delighted with the news.
The public, they like what we do, and it feels so nice to be up against stiff competition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like ITV, like BBC, and it's us that steps away with the gong. It feels amazing, doesn't it? It feels
You're going to
really,
drop
really
that
good.
in a minute.
I just love it. I just want to be like, yeah!
You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the left, the Tory wets and the civil service blob being purposefully ignorant, or do they genuinely want to allow the continued illegal invasion of the UK via the Channel on small boats? This is no longer simply a provocative question, when today these nefarious forces are willfully misrepresenting the purpose of the Rwanda scheme, one of our best hopes to stop the boats, or at least reduce the stream of terrorists and criminals putting the lives of our loved ones at risk. However, today, the mainstream media has trumpeted figures from the Home Office claiming the cost of deporting a sole migrant to Rwanda is £169,000, which is £63,000 more each than the price of allowing the migrants to remain in the UK. Now, let me tell you, that is a ludicrous summation. Because if the Rwanda scheme is allowed to go ahead by the British courts this Thursday, then it will become a deterrent. The cost now is irrelevant. Economic migrants will be faced with a choice of staying in the first world country of France or risking their lives and spending thousands on an unsafe passage to the UK via the Channel, knowing that they may end up permanently in Rwanda. Such a deterrent literally stopped the boats to Australia within a year. But the report quotes an academic consensus that there was, quote, little to no evidence that policy changes deterred people from leaving their home countries and seeking refuge. Now, how intellectually dishonest can these people be? The illegal migrants crossing the Channel are leaving France, which is not their home country. And many are from NATO countries like Albania, for goodness sake. Let me tell you, once the first deportation plane leaves the UK from Rwanda, the game changes for dastardly people smugglers. And even if just 37% of illegals are put off from making the trip, the policy becomes an economic success. But you haven't heard that today from the usual suspects.
Ask if the immigration minister had seriously signed off this garbage of an impact assessment that no self-respecting minister could possibly think was serious. It will cost £169,000 per person to pay another country to take asylum decisions for us. Now, so far, the government sent more Home Secretaries than asylum seekers.
So what is the number the SNP would have?
It's not about a number. You can fix this by safe and legal routes and sorting your Home Office.
How many safe and legal routes would you have?
OK. You should have an open, safe and legal route.
But does that sound like value for money, £169,000 per person?
No, I don't think it does.
People come in here with next to nothing, costing the United Kingdom £169,000 to send them to a country where they don't want to go to, even if they are genuine refugees and asylum. I mean, it's insane.
Now, I remind you, no flights to Rwanda have yet taken off. Suella Braverman continues to insist that doing nothing is not an option. The Home Secretary has added, we cannot allow a system to continue which incentivises people to risk their lives and pay people smugglers to come to this country illegally while placing an unacceptable strain on the UK taxpayers. The fact the left, with their cabal of millionaire socialist human rights lawyers and Labour activists, are trying to frustrate this policy is a disgrace. It allows the people smugglers to win. It means hundreds more migrants are going to die making that perilous crossing. And it means Britain's borders remain an international joke. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, the GB News presenter and commentator, the Reverend Calvin Robinson, and the author and broadcaster, Rebecca Reid. So, Amanda Patel, this is clearly the Home Office working in conjunction with their mates in the MSM to try and paint the Rwanda policy as some big waste of money, while actually completely missing the point of what the policy is meant to be. If it works, it becomes a deterrent.
OK, this may be the last time you ever invite me on your show, Dan, because I completely and utterly disagree with the whole Rwanda policy. I've looked at it closely.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought it was a great idea, but then I thought, it's not working, nothing is working here. And the only country in the world that successfully solved its illegal migration problem and increased its number of legal migration is Australia. And the only way you do that is you lock people up in a very nice, secure place. They don't get to wander around the towns. They don't go on barges. They don't go to kind of nice, they don't go to five-star hotels. They're actually, the moment they enter the country, they are contained and they're processed quickly, and then they're told the legitimate asylum seekers are allowed through. The rest are sent home. And the ones who come here illegally are told, you will never set foot in this country again, except for as a tourist, if you're lucky. And I just think that what we've done now is we've gone through layer and layer and layer of ideas and deterrence and talking about we've got to stop the evil gangsters. What Australia proved is you have to stop people's desire to come here because they know they won't get here and they know they won't be able to stay. And I'm afraid saying, well, Rwanda's quite nice, the weather's quite lovely, you can go there. I just don't think it works.
Also, what confuses me is I've heard on people on the right saying both Rwanda's a great place to be, it's not a punishment, and also it'll be a deterrent. It can't be both those things. Either it's a deterrent or
it is
a
a deterrent. But where it is a deterrent, and let me explain how, is that these folk are, on the whole, by and large, economic migrants, OK? They know that it's very easy in the UK to make money on the black market.
Sure.
And it's not easy to do that in Rwanda. So most of them are going to say, we would rather stay in France than risk coming to the UK and going to Rwanda. And that's where it's a deterrent.
If you are so desperate to be an economic migrant that you will get in a boat that has a fairly significant portion of being where you die, then and that's not a deterrent.
Proportion.
No, but if you're not scared of dying in the crossing, why would you be scared of being sent to Rwanda? The scariest thing that can happen is that you drown, and people are going out.
Because you'd rather stay in France. You do understand the reason that they want to come to the UK on the whole is because there is a vast criminal network operating, and it is much easier to be part of that criminal network here and work under the table than it is in France, where they have a much stronger identity system.
Calais is a miserable place to be.
And because you can disappear the moment you get off the boat. You can literally, half of those people that even come here, they don't even go to the four-star hotels. Half of them just disappear immediately. They've got people picking them up. It's no deterrent.
Calvin Robinson, you have been to Rwanda recently.
Yes.
I guess it's interesting, in some ways, the point both Rebecca and Amanda are making. Have we almost made Rwanda look too appealing? Are we almost saying
said it was lovely.
This is too good?
It is very appealing. I loved it. Green hills, wonderful, hospitable people, fantastic place to be. But of course, you're right in that it's a deterrent because people are coming over here for our benefit system, for the criminal underground that's here, and Suella Braverman is right in that it's a deterrent to prevent the people smugglers. It's a deterrent to prevent people risking their lives across the water. And for people to say that, only we need 37% of migrants to be deterred for it to work, well, Australia proves that it can work. 99.99999%.
Australia's system is very different and a lot harsher.
And the thing is,
having a deterrent in place.
But what you
works.
need is
but with
their deterrent is mean.
System.
Maybe let's have a harsher system. This could be step one. I'm up for you. Let's get gunboats too. Let's do that.
I mean, listen, I feel very strongly very anti-gunboats. We've had this row.
We have.
Does Jesus love gunboats? I think no, you think yes.
Jesus said pick up a sword.
OK. Jesus said a lot of things. Anyway, but if you believe in borders and you don't want people coming here, which is not how I feel, but if you do, then I don't understand how you would think that this...
If you don't want people coming here, it's about protecting the people that are already here.
If you feel the way that you do, and Dan does and Amanda does, this is wishy-washy, pathetic, useless.
Maybe it's step one, then.
200 people in Rwanda is not going to change anything.
It's pathetic.
But the point is, it is a start, and we have to start with the deterrent. There has not been one plane that has taken off because the left-wing lawyers are frustrating it through the justice system. It's not a silly idea. You don't want it to work because you want open borders. That's what it comes down to. You do want open borders.
If you're going to do something sensible, not something that came out at the end of a meeting that somebody put on a whiteboard that clearly isn't going to work. This is an expensive pride project for Suella Braverman, who wants to show off.
Number one, this wasn't actually Suella Braverman's policy. She adopted it and took it on from the previous administration, Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, but she has embraced it and she believes in it.
Priti Patel really reduced
at the end of the day, I believe that we have to allow the Rwanda scheme to work because fundamentally what everyone misses when they talk about the so-called asylum seekers, who by and large
Some
are
of whom
economic
are legitimate asylum
migrants.
seekers.
Call them illegal
Who-
immigrants.
Some of them are legitimate
but
asylum
that's the
seekers.
point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. The vast majority of them are not asylum seekers, and they do not want to risk leaving France, a first world country, to end up in Rwanda. Let's see. If it doesn't work and it doesn't provide a deterrent, let's see.
But in the
Living in a
meantime,
camp in
let's
Calais.
take some of those useless islands off Scotland, which I know you're incredibly fond of.
I am. I adore them.
This is actually
and
a
let's
better
take a few
idea.
of them and just have you basically. That's what they did with Nauru in Australia. They had islands where you put people when they came here, you process them
But at
quickly.
least that's
You get
practical.
rid of all of the working from home idiots in the Home Office who are doing nothing. If they can't process someone within a week, they get sacked.
I'm a big fan of the
Or
idea of
you could
offshore
maybe fix
processing
the
as
actual
well.
problem,
But at the idea, this is the scheme that the government has decided to put themselves into. We can't judge it before it's
Yes, we can,
happened.
because it's stupid. What we need to actually do, if you actually
Time
want
will
to stop
tell.
it, is find the people
Time
who are
will
doing
tell.
the people trafficking, put
It's not-
more money into intelligence
Rebecca,
and undo
it's
those
never about
and cooperate
There
with
has
France.
never been a model where you break the people traffickers and break illegal immigration. There's never been.
But just because
an
it hasn't been
example
done
of that
before
in the
doesn't mean
world.
it can't be
That's one of the
done.
things that we say. Oh, they're all victims. You know, they're just the
Exactly.
victims.
Which is why there has to be a realistic
Okay,
deterrent.
but then Amanda's idea that she came up with in like 3 minutes just now is a better idea than this complete nonsense.
So we're going with gunboats, are we?
No, not
Let's go with
gunboats. Not
No, I didn't do
gunboats. Safe
gunboats.
legal
Agree.
processing centres.
Calvin
Scotland.
Robertson,
I didn't
Amanda
do
Patel, my
gunboats.
superstar panel, they are here all night. Now, still to come, as the TV industry goes into meltdown with GB News Breakfast and Nigel Farage beating the MSM's lefty lovies to win at the prestigious Trick Awards, could their disdain for the voting viewers be any clearer? Nigel Farage joins me live to reveal all about the day's extraordinary events shortly. But up next, in The Clash, the Sussex's Hollywood horror goes from bad to worse as a powerful celebrity agent launches a brutal takedown of the couple in Cannes. But it's Jeremy Zimmer, is he right, to say that Meghan lacks talent? Lady Victoria Harvey and Amy Ansell do battle on that in The Clash next. But what do you think? Email me, Dan at gbnews.com. Tweet me using the handle at GBNews. Our poll running there too. The Clash, straight after the break.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel. Nigel Farage is going to tell us about what happened during that extraordinary meltdown by the MSM at a major awards bash today. First, though, the clash. And Harry and Meghan's Hollywood dreams are tonight hanging by a thread as one of America's most influential celebrity agents became the latest big name to slam the Sussexes. After the humiliating loss of their $20 million Spotify contract, a host of famous faces have hit out at the toxic couple. The latest, talent agency boss Jeremy Zimmer, who's represented Mariah Carey and Paris Hilton and Lizzo, he told advertisers at the Cannes Lion Festival last week, turns out Meghan Markle was not a great audio talent or necessarily any kind of talent. Just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something. So what do you think about this one? As one of Hollywood's most powerful celebrity agents launches a brutal takedown in Cannes, is he right that Meghan lacks talent? Dan at gbnews.com voted our poll at gbnews on Twitter. And to debate this now, I'm joined by the socialite, royal insider, Lady Victoria Harvey, and the social commentator, a defender of Harry and Meghan, Amy Ansell. So look, Lady V, you know exactly how the US talent industry works. Meghan's side could say, this Zimmer is just jealous because he runs UTA, United Talent Agency,
and she's
signed to the big rival.
Yeah.
But actually, doesn't he have a point? Because she's had 3 years to show that she's got the talent to launch a successful podcast or TV show or series or charity project. And actually, she's done nothing. So where is the talent? I tend to agree with him, Lady V.
I sort of agree with him. I think with her, it's just like a lot of talk. It's a lot of press coverage about their next project, what they're going to do. And then it just kind of fizzles out.
So she's got a talent for being a victim.
Well, that is part of it, but it's like this thing of like they're so busy and they're doing this project and this project, but they never really happen, do they? And you know,
do you think she's got any talents?
I don't really see much talent there. Do you? I mean, I never heard of her before she dated Prince Harry, and I don't think most people did. I mean, that show was not like a huge sort of international iconic show. It was, you know, obviously some people watched it, but I don't know anyone that watched that show.
Yeah, I mean, she was on Suits. I saw a couple of episodes of it.
Was it
sort
good?
of played herself. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of an average, like, series. It's not a Mad Men. It's not a Breaking Bad.
And the thing
you
is
know.
now, with her being Meghan Markle and so known as this persona, I think it'll be really hard for her to step into a role and play an acting role.
Amy, really simple question. You know, is this guy being unfair? Does Meghan Markle have talent?
Well, first of all, it's an extremely bad taste for an agent to speak publicly negatively about your own talent or someone else's talent. It's just wrong.
Well, it's unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah,
This doesn't really
so
happen.
it was wrong, period. Whether it was a dig at Ari Emanuel, I don't know, but he shouldn't have done that in the first place.
But is it true?
Absolutely not. I think
What
Meghan
talent
is
does she have?
extremely talented. First of all, as an actress in LA, it's hard to book one show, let alone several jobs.
So she got
You know
Suits.
it's tough.
Yeah, no, it is.
It is tough. It's really tough. She
So
got
Suits was a big break.
Yes. She's not a Nepo baby. She simply auditioned, got the job, and that's impressive
Okay,
in
so you
itself.
say talent for being an actor. The issue is she said that she's turned her back on acting for good. She doesn't want to do that now.
But
so what's her talent outside of acting?
Listen, I also see her as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur. Before she came...
She's made a lot of money now.
A lot of money. I mean, it's pretty incredible. As a fellow businesswoman, I actually really respect her. I mean, just the TIG blog alone was making $80K a year. That's nothing to sneeze at. But
Okay,
ultimately,
Lady V, that's
she's a
a
great...
fair point, isn't it? Has she not shown that she has a talent to swindle people out of their millions?
I say that she's a good networker.
Entrepreneurial
A networker is a great...
networker, gold digger.
I wouldn't say gold digger, but networker for sure. That is a talent.
She's good at deceiving people.
I wouldn't say deceiving people.
I mean, what do you make of this Bill Simmons, who runs podcasts at Spotify, describing her as a grifter, which effectively means that you're some sort of small-scale swindler?
Well, ultimately, I think they made a massive mistake by agreeing to the deal. So maybe he's embarrassed and he's trying to push the blame on Harry and Meghan when ultimately it was their fault for making the deal in the first place.
But you say you're a businesswoman.
Yeah.
They had a contract with Spotify. They did not fulfil their contractual obligations.
And the business pivoted. They said, OK, it hasn't been a great idea business-wise. We're going to part ways, and that was very smart. But listen, Meghan and Harry have a $100 million deal with Netflix, so they're going to go where the money is.
But it's all numbers. Like, I don't believe they're ever going to get paid that much.
No, because to get that amount of money, they actually have to fulfil the contract.
Exactly, and they have to do, like, with Netflix, they have to do so many, different shows with them.
It's a 5-year deal.
I mean, Lady V, maybe I'm being slightly facetious, but I guess she does have a genuine talent of selling out her own... Well, no, I was going to say of selling out her own family members.
Yeah, and her family. I mean...
Because really, that's how she's made the money.
Yeah.
Can we just be honest about it? She's made the money for Netflix because she was prepared to sell out the royal family and her own family.
Yeah, and that's why, as much as Harry complains, he still wanted his children to be prince and princess, because he realises that without that, they'll have nothing. They won't be able to do what they're doing,
Beautiful woman, though.
Stunning. I just think she knows exactly what she's doing. She's networking all over the place.
No,
Contacts make contracts, as they say. And I think she's great at it. And a lot of people can learn from her skill set, actually. I think she's doing a great job networking, getting around.
You're joking.
I think she's doing a great job,
Amy, no, sorry. I've got to pull you up on that. I actually think Meghan is such a bad role model. What on earth can young people learn from her? Yeah. What? Learn from her that if you chuck all of your blood relatives under the bus, if you screw over an entire country, if you lie about racism claims, that you can succeed?
Think
I mean, how is she a role model? I think, well, listen, I think there's lots of other things that women can look up to in Meghan Markle. Look what she's made. Listen, a lot of people want to climb that ladder socioeconomically, and she's done a great job of it. She's gotten everything she wanted. She probably said, I want to marry Prince Harry. I want to make several million. I want to live in a mansion in Montecito. And there she is, fulfilling. She's probably read a lot of self-help books and gotten to where she wanted to go. And that is what a lot of people want to do. And also, nowadays, there's so much to be said for content creation. She had 3 million followers But she
on
hasn't
Instagram.
done it.
But maybe she
will.
Content created.
Listen,
Ari Emanuel, doing that.
I think she will. And Ari
Emanuel,
Emanuel,
she's not gonna have a TV career,
who is one of the biggest agents in Hollywood. They call him a Hollywood mogul. Yeah. He signed her. He's not going to make a stupid decision and sign her for no reason.
So, Lady V, you say she's going to have to go back to being an influencer.
And she probably plans to.
I think she's going to go back to being an influencer.
Great idea.
Because there's not going to be any roles for her. She's not going to... I
don't think he signed her for her acting ability, actually. He signed her for brand partnerships. And also for TV and production deals, not for acting.
The problem is with brands, though, because of the backlash that they get, it's going to be super dangerous for brands to get attached to them.
Ultimately, he wouldn't have signed her if he didn't see massive dollar figures.
But
so
that's
I think
Spotify and Netflix saw, right? So,
but he signed her after.
I mean, I think there could be
sour.
something short term. I just don't see longevity in it. I just,
I think he does. He's not a stupid man. He's a good businessman. A billionaire.
I mean, he definitely was. I don't know anymore, but even with Netflix, I think it will keep going for a few years, and then they'll just burn out. And they'll have
I think there's so many more deals to come, guaranteed.
Okay. Lady Victoria Harvey, Amy and Zell, thank you both so much. But who do you agree with? Is the celebrity agent Jeremy Zimmer right that Meghan Markle lacks talent? Well, from Kirk via Twitter, he says yes, she's a failed actress, which shows a lack of talent. Where would she be now if she hadn't married the traitor? From Dino, this is a bit harsh. I heard she was a decent B-list actress. I actually think that's a fair point. Yeah, that's what she was. That's what she was before she married Harry. And as Lady V says, not many of us had actually heard of her. And from Dawn, she lacks not only talent, but insight, integrity, kindness, personality, and longevity. Anything else, Dawn? She'll be out of this marriage faster than a sprinter off the starting blocks. And all will be blamed on her husband. Your verdict is now in. 88% of you say that celebrity agent Jeremy Zimmer is right to say that Meghan Markle lacks talent. Just 12% of you say he's wrong. Now, coming up, more of that damning assessment of Meghan's lack of talent as I'm joined by Megyn Kelly, who weighs in with some explosive analysis of her own and answers whether Netflix should follow Spotify's lead and drop the toxic Sussexes. Megyn Kelly's back very shortly. You don't want to miss it. But next, as Lord Frost launches a radical call to revive the fortunes of the failing Conservative Party under the disastrous leadership of Rishi Sunak, is the former Brexit minister right that the party must slash taxes, halt the rush to net zero and hold a referendum on the European Convention of Human Rights? Or does the Conservative Party need to lose to become Conservative again? My superstar panel to return that in just a few moments' time. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nigel Farage on the way, but first, US media superstar Megyn Kelly. And when Harry and Meghan announced their Spotify deal was cancelled after a mutual agreement to part ways earlier this month, they probably didn't expect Spotify's head of podcast innovation, Bill Simmons, to come out and slam their contribution to the project. But that's exactly what he did, with a host of famous faces following his lead in exposing the shameless Sussexes.
Wish I had been involved in the Meghan and Harry leave Spotify negotiation. The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them.
I think Harry's a like, my life was so hard. Everybody's life is hard.
Yeah,
you were
true.
the prince of
That's
a
true.
goddamn country who dressed up as a Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope?
Ladies and gentlemen, I can do 12 episodes in my sleep. 12 episodes, $20 million.
And most recently, one of Hollywood's most influential talent agents, Jeremy Zimmer, the chief executive of United Talent Agency, responsible for managing the careers of Mariah Carey, Paris Hilton and Lizzo, blasted. Turns out Meghan Markle was not a great audio talent, or necessarily any kind of talent. Just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something. So with their $100 million Netflix deal now under the spotlight, the Sussexes may just be sweating over their professional futures. Megyn Kelly, goodness gracious me, it's collapsed. It's collapsed.
It's wonderful to see that there are just desserts, that these two whiny, lazy losers have outed themselves to the world. The thing that bothers me the most about all of it, and the reason I celebrate this news, is they don't want to work hard. That's been at the heart of their troubles from the beginning. That's more than half the reason they left the royal family. They didn't want to do the work. They only wanted all the accolades. They didn't want to go to the ribbon cutting ceremonies. They only wanted to wear the crown jewels. And by they, I mean her. And he's been a hot mess for a long, long time preceding her. And so now they get into what is really my business, podcasting, and realize, you know what, it's hard. It actually takes hard work. They just thought they'd be number one and they wouldn't have to do much. And it looked kind of sexy because you could be on camera or you could be on audio and people would listen to you. And they found out the hard way, you actually have to work. Yes, some talent is required, but it's the hard work that makes the difference. You know, I know you, Dan, like me, we get up early, we work all day long. It's not just the hour that you're on the air. It's not just the 2 hours that I do my show. It's all day. You have to follow the news updates. You have to follow the latest tweak in the information that you studied the morning. The morning's news may have to get thrown out because something else happens. You have to sacrifice certain times with your family and your friends and your plans. You have to prioritize your show and your news and your commitment to your audience. And only those who do that will succeed in this business. And they found out the hard way that you cannot phone it in. So that's number one. I love to see it happen when they're being outed by their own staff and their own companies as shocked by the amount of work, right?
But Megyn, that's what's really surprised me though, right? Because you know how Hollywood works, okay? It is the fakest industry. And usually people backstab, right? So they say in public, oh, we really loved this person, but, you know, we had creative differences, whatever. But actually with Harry and Meghan, there's like a real visceral negativity coming out. And it feels like there's been a change since the Bill Simmons comment. Is it almost like other executives, other celebrities now feel that they can be honest about Harry and Meghan too, whereas in the past they had to pretend that they liked them?
I think you're onto something there. But I also think that when they first started painting themselves as victims, and she played the race card and he played the mental health card, the natural inclination is to, whoa, okay, be careful. That could be true. I don't want to be the person who doubted that. And come, you know, who knows? Like the Hollywood instinct would be sensitive toward those allegations. Don't be the person challenging them. But they've just done it so often that even Hollywood has caught on. There was a takedown in an offshoot of New York Magazine just a few days ago that I was shocked to see. Even the left-wing publications are hitting them. I mean, we saw the Wall Street Journal piece declaring them as a couple, as a commercial couple, a total flop. And that's the right wing. But here's the left wing calling them out for they can't get anything going and no one has any interest in them, and pointing out that unless they have another chapter about the ones we really care about, the sitting royals, then they're out of tricks, because we only care about them to the extent they're an offshoot of the actual royals. Her series Pearl, that got axed because no one had actual interest in it. The stories about Harry and his absolute obtuse attempts to cast himself as, I guess, the next Oprah. He wanted to interview Vladimir Putin about his childhood trauma. Dan, I can't.
Now, you've interviewed Putin, right? You've interviewed Putin. You don't interview him about his childhood trauma, do you?
Okay. All right. But the chances of Vladimir Putin talking about his childhood trauma are about the same chances of him giving up power because someone didn't like his war in Ukraine. The man doesn't operate like that. My God, what could he be thinking? Though I will say, when I interviewed him, I did squeeze in one question that went as follows. What's with all the shirtless photos? And that was a fun moment. But Harry projects
what did he say?
His own eyes. And, he said, I give the people what they want. But Harry only thinks we're interested in that crap because he is, because that's his world.
Well, it's all he's got, doesn't he? It's all he's got. Blame everything on childhood trauma. That's Harry's solution. I was really fascinated, Meghan, by the rejection, the brutal rejection from Taylor Swift to Meghan. So Meghan pens her one of her calligraphy notes that she spent ages on, and Taylor doesn't even bother to respond, just gets her PR rep to say no, treating Meghan Markle as if she's any old TV interviewer or tabloid or magazine wanting to secure an interview with Taylor Swift. What's that about? And does it actually show that American celebrities care more about the royal family than they do Harry and Meghan? Because Taylor's always been very proud of having this relationship with Prince William, for example.
Well, I think that's true for sure. Her loyalty is not with the Sussexes, but she's also a kind of American royalty. I mean, we don't have royalty over here, but Taylor Swift is in a league of just a very small few. She's 10,000 times the star Meghan Markle will ever be. And so it would have been extraordinary for her to sit with somebody that beneath her. I mean, in terms of the celebrity scale, you know, we've talked before when Meghan made up her fake paparazzi scandal on the streets of New York about Taylor Swift and the number of stalking scares she's had. I know where she lives and I know what's happened there. She rises above. She doesn't go to the tabloids and report it. We only found out about a lot of these things because we actually happen to have a connection with somebody who works at her house. But the point is, there's just no comparing these two women. So, of course, Taylor Swift was not going to sit with her. But I think part of the reason Spotify is no longer interested in her and her podcast is they're going into season 2, ostensibly, when she's having this negotiation. I'll bet you anything she had all no's. Her reputation, her just the feel around her has changed dramatically from before she launched season 1. I'll bet you even Serena wouldn't go back and sit with her now. She's damaged goods. People can see it, that she's tarnished her own reputation. She comes across as a whiner, and so does he. And so to associate with them is sort of an endorsement, which is why I have real questions about this whole alleged Dior partnership as well.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Damaged goods. Megyn Kelly on Meghan Markle. And, of course, sign up to the Megyn Kelly Show on YouTube or as a podcast. Thank you so much, Meghan.
Great to see you.
We'll speak very soon. But coming up, as Matt Hancock returns to the public spotlight to give evidence to the COVID inquiry, apologising for every death from the virus, but not the lockdown. Can you trust a word the ex-health secretary has to say? My superstar panel return to debate that soon. But next, as GB News picks up 2 gongs at the Trick Awards, including Nigel Farage winning Best Presenter, have the lefty lovies in the MSM who shamelessly heckled him been exposed for their intolerance and disdain. Nigel's got to join me live from his celebration to talk all about the day's extraordinary events in just a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media.
We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Time now for What the Farage, and today our Nigel and the GB News family infuriated the London media establishment by winning big at the famous Trick Awards, when the showbiz lovies changed the format of their gongs to give all of the power to the viewing public. They clearly had no idea it would mean the People's Channel triumphing over the MSM. The first blow to the out-of-touch media establishment came when Our Breakfast Show won the Best Multi-Channel News Programme, gong beeping off competition from the likes of left-wing Channel 4 News and woke ITV's Good Morning Britain. But the real moment of horror for the TV industry's metropolitan lefties came when Farage was crowned Best News Presenter, pipping Susanna Reid and Piers Morgan, as well as Eamon Holmes and Stephen Dixon of This Parish. Look.
Winner is Nigel Farage.
And let me tell you, they weren't happy. Nigel joins me live now from his celebratory dinner. And Nigel, look, before you react to today's extraordinary events, I just want to take a look at the shocking reaction to your acceptance speech by London's Liberal elite.
I have to say, I'm really rather proud to have this because I'm a new boy. Only been doing this for a couple of years, so a huge thanks to all those good ordinary folk who live outside the M25 for voting for me. I suspect that had the industry had the say, I very much doubt I would have won, and I'm certain that 3 GB News presenters would not have been in the shortlist of 5, which should be very instructive for the whole industry. You see, the investors, please do keep the abuse coming, because it says a lot more about you than it does about me. The way we measure who is watching and who is listening to programmes is completely out of touch and out of date. I had much louder than this in the European Parliament, sir. I'm disappointed. Any idea of competition, and you should shout, and you should be frightened, because you will lose your jobs, because I can tell you this, Barb is wrong, and we need reform of this system. We need, oh look, there we are. We need the heavies to come.
So, Nigel, congratulations. You were actually basically ushered off stage at that point. What happened?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I dared to challenge the format, the established status quo, by which this 12 to 15 billion pound a year industry operates, and of course massive advertising revenues off the back of it. You know, I dared to challenge Barb, which I guess most of your viewers, Dan, haven't heard of, but this is how we measure TV audiences. The company that does it is owned by, have a guess, BBC, ITV, Sky News, Channel 4, Channel 5, and the advertising industry, and they want no outsiders to have any input or influence at all. So the whole thing is, to quote a friend of mine, it's a rigged election, it's so bad. You know, the whole thing's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And all I did was call it out and say, how in a country of 66 million people can you measure a challenger company like GB News on 5,300 boxes in people's homes? And statistically, I'm not wrong in saying that. But as Corporal Jones used to say in Dad's Army, they don't like it up 'em. They don't like it up 'em. They couldn't bear it. They couldn't deal with it. But I hope what we've done today, on the back of the massive success of our breakfast show, and indeed myself and my team with our little modest performance at 7 o'clock every evening, is we've opened up a big debate about how we measure television viewing figures. And they don't like it. But I tell you what, they're going to lose.
And Nigel, the big news is Donald Trump himself has weighed in tonight on your victory. Trump has said of you, Nigel, he truly is incredible with what he does and says everybody listens. The respect is long and deep. Your response?
Well, I'm very honoured that the 45th President of America, and indeed the 47th President of America, has weighed in behind me with support, and I'm very, very grateful to him. And you know, there's no secret, Dan, we're good friends. He's a big winner, but you know, when he came over to Turnberry the other month, the only interview he did was with me and with GB News. It says a hell of a lot, because he is going to win. He is going to win next November, absolutely.
And look, I was in the room today, Nigel. They were rattled, weren't they? There's a nervousness about what's happening with GB News because there's massive momentum behind us when we know Sly News is failing and the British Bashing Corporation is failing, not to mention woke ITV. So I guess they have reason to be worried, and probably that was also partly behind the reaction to you in the room today.
Worried? They should be scared out of their lives. They're all about to lose their jobs. I'm coming for them, as I did before in the European Parliament. Look, the whole industry had become so one-sided, so lacking in open debate. And you know what, GB News has opened the whole thing up in a most remarkable way. And we're fair, we're objective, we allow other sides of the argument to have a fair say. And what we do is really, really good. And Dan, you know what? We're here tonight. We're celebrating. Are we celebrating, guys?
Good. Well, I'll let you guys get back to it. I'm very jealous. Enjoy the oysters. Enjoy the champagne. Thank you for interrupting. Award-winning presenter Nigel Farage. Brilliant stuff. Now, coming up, as the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death comes to a close, finding that it was accidental, did Lancashire Police do enough to find the tragic mother of two? Former detective turned investigative journalist Mark Williams-Thomas offers his expert insight shortly. But next, as Matt Hancock returns to the public spotlight to give evidence to the COVID inquiry, apologising for every death from the virus, but not the catastrophic lockdown. Can you trust a word the lying ex-health secretary has to say? My superstar panel return to debate that in moments. Plus, a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. Don't go anywhere because we're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight. The inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded, with the coroner ruling that she did not have any intention to take her own life and died accidentally. And in a statement outside Preston County Hall, the bereaved family paid tribute to the person they knew as Nikki.
We will forever remember her as a brilliant mum, partner, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much.
Coming up, investigative journalist and former police officer Mark Williams-Thomas, who attended the inquest and is a specialist in this case, is going to join me live to give his final expert analysis. And as it's revealed that Nicola had not been drinking when she drowned in the River Wyre, should Lancashire Police, headed by Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Smith, apologise for releasing to the public information that she had issues with alcohol? My superstar panel give their views shortly, and tonight I'm joined by Amanda Patel, Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Before that, Matt Hancock returned to the public spotlight, giving evidence at the COVID inquiry. And instead of apologising for the untold harms caused by his inhumane lockdown policies, the disgraced former health secretary spoke about his feelings.
I'm profoundly sorry for each death that has occurred. It is honest and heartfelt, and I'm not very good at talking about my emotions and how I feel.
But was Hancock telling the truth there, or in any other part of his evidence? We'll debate that next. Plus, as Netflix demands more content from the Sussexes if they want to hold on to their £40 million pay packet, were the vengeful pair wrong to think they'd be anything without the royal family? Tom Bauer reacts live in the studio in Uncancelled, and he has a fresh bombshell on how, I can't believe I'm saying this, the spirit of the late Princess Diana has been guiding the couple. Meanwhile, as Champagne socialist Gary Neville joins Lineker on the BBC after it's announced he'll appear on Dragon's Den, have the woke Beeb now just given up presenting itself as an impartial broadcaster? We'll tackle that one in the media buzz. And this morning's daytime dominance has ended in the wake of the Philip Schofield scandal, as lifestyle show A Place in the Sun pips them to a trick gong.
Father Brown and This Morning. And the winner of the OK Daytime is A Place in the Sun.
Is that why Holly Willoughby decided to sit out today's events? I'll tell you shortly. Plus, we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, right after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight. An inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded today. The mother of two died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr James Aidley told the inquest today that Nicola Bulley fell into cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst out walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later. Lancashire Police said today it hopes the inquiry will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. Now, Matt Hancock criticised the UK's pandemic planning today before COVID hit, saying it was completely wrong. The former Health Secretary was telling the COVID inquiry that strategic planning was focused on whether there were enough body bags rather than stopping the virus taking hold. He says it was a colossal failure to assume the spread of the virus couldn't be stopped, and he added he was profoundly sorry for every death. Hospital consultants in England are to walk out next month in a dispute over pay. Members of the British Medical Association voted in favour of strikes on the 20th and the 21st of July, unless a credible offer is forthcoming. Meanwhile, nurses' strikes have ended after a ballot for further industrial action failed to meet the legal 50% threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says only 43% cast their vote in the ballot. The Health Secretary saying he is, though, ready to work with the RCN going forward.
We reached a deal with the NHS Staff Council that the majority of trade unions agreed to. I'm pleased that the RCN have now ended their industrial action, and we stand ready to work in partnership with the NHS Staff Council as a whole, but also with the RCN. There are a number of aspects of our deal with the Agenda for Change unions. We continue to work with them, and we stand ready to do so with the RCN.
And in news away from home tonight, the Belarusian president says Wagner Group boss Yevgeny Prigozhin is now in Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko had previously offered the mercenary chief a relocation deal to his country, helping to end Saturday's march on Moscow. Wagner troops were told they could either join the Russian army, move to Belarus with their leader, or return to their families. And that comes as the Kremlin says Vladimir Putin's position is not shaken by the attempted mutiny. As you've been hearing, GB News picked up a couple of awards today, Trick Awards to be precise. GB News Breakfast won multi-channel news programme of the year, beating established news outlet offerings. And Nigel Farage was awarded News Presenter of the Year, much to the surprise of the assorted guests at the glittering afternoon ceremony at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello expressed their delight at the news.
The public, they like what we do, and it feels so nice to be up against stiff competition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like ITV, like BBC, and it's us that steps away with the gong. It feels amazing, doesn't it? It feels
You're going to
really,
drop
really
that
good.
in a minute.
I just love it. I just want to be like, yeah!
On TV, online, DAB Plus Radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News.
Tomorrow's news site now in our media buzz. Let's kick off with a first look at the front pages. These are hot off the press. First to the Metro, which leads with Matt Hancock's claim that Britain's pandemic plan was completely wrong, with officials focused more on buying body bags than fighting a virus. We're going to debating this in just a moment, actually. The Eye reports, though, that Vladimir Putin sent his presidential plane to Washington, D.C. tonight to bring Russian diplomats home from America. That comes amid rising tensions between the global powers after the failed Wagner mutiny. My superstar panel back with me now, top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, the Reverend Calvin Robinson and best-selling author Rebecca Reed. Now, disgraced former Health Secretary Matt Hancock made his return to the public spotlight today, giving evidence at the COVID inquiry, as we just heard with Polly. The questions were meant to be related to Module 1 of the inquiry and focused on pandemic resilience and preparedness. Hancock was actually told off by Hugo Keith KC for going off topic as he repeated his absolute lack of repentance for forcing inhumane lockdowns on the nation. Watch this.
That we've got to be ready to hit a pandemic hard, that we've got to be able to take action, lockdown action if necessary, that is wider, earlier, more stringent than feels comfortable at the time. And the failure to plan for that was a much bigger flaw in the strategy than the fact that it was targeted at the wrong disease.
Hancock was also back to his unbearable blubbering as he issued this apology.
I'm profoundly sorry for each death that has occurred. It is honest and heartfelt, and I'm not very good at talking about my emotions and how I feel.
Really, mate? You could have fooled me because, look, you've certainly always been good at faking your emotions.
Just simple words there, reacting it. You're quite emotional about that.
Well, it's just, it's been such a tough year for so many people. And
do you know what it is, actually? What I'm really looking for is a bit of forgiveness. That's what I'm really looking for.
Hey. Oh, my God, I nearly cried then. There you
So
go,
did
Matt.
I just want to be very clear, Amanda Patel. This guy is a fake, he is a phony, he is a fraud, he is a very good actor, and I think he is doing all he can to take away any of the blame from himself and his catastrophic COVID lockdown policies.
Well, watching that clip of him from I'm a Celebrity, and he says, oh, I'm looking for a bit of forgiveness. Honestly, I thought I was going to have to leave the room and go and throw up in the loo. And him blubbing, oh, I'm sorry for every single death. And yet in the same breath, he's saying, if it happened again, I would bring in much tougher lockdowns. What was the...
Earlier lockdowns.
Earlier lockdowns, more stringent lockdowns. Has he learnt nothing from what has happened before?
But he hasn't.
And to see him blubbing today, I mean, honestly, it just makes you really, really sick.
He's trying to blame everyone else.
If he'd spent less time snogging his mistress and more time protecting care homes, there wouldn't have been so many people who died.
Yeah. Well, Calvin, we've got to be honest about this, don't we? Look, you and I have been huge critics of Hancock from very early on. However, he loved this pandemic. It was great for him. And I know a lot of people criticise me for saying that, but this is a guy who has proven that all he wants is fame. And he knew that the pandemic was making him the most famous man in the country.
Yeah, not just
and
fame,
look at how it
power
went to
as
his
well.
head. Yeah, because it was fame and power, and it was also that sort of fame and power that makes you think that you're invincible. You can cheat on your loyal wife with one of your aides while you're telling young people who are 20 years old that they can't have sex with their own boyfriend or girlfriend. It's sickening to me.
It is sickening. All of it is sickening. But at least he acknowledged that he's responsible for many deaths. And after repentance comes
penance. Did he
penance.
acknowledge that?
Well,
he said...
He apologised.
He said, I'm sorry for... What did he actually say?
Well, now it's time for the consequences of that.
He immediately tried to pass the buck, though, Calvin.
Yeah, indeed. But then he also said we need harder lockdowns and quicker lockdowns, and he doesn't realise that the response to COVID was far worse than the illness itself. We know now that it was a bad cold and or a flu situation, and he punished people with these lockdowns. He was an authoritarian dictator of sorts. He took away parliamentary powers and put it into an executive with like 4 people deciding the fate of the entire nation. That is wicked.
He destroyed so many of our lives. And also, as I'm always pointing out, remember I had the guy here for our lockdown inquiry, as I'm always pointing out, so many of the reasons why he destroyed the country because of lockdown were to cover up for his failings when it came to protecting the care homes, which actually resulted in the deaths of lots of very vulnerable old people.
And he mentioned...
my great auntie died in a care home of COVID. So, yeah.
But he mentioned those body bags, and I think that's interesting as well, because I remember at the start of lockdown, we saw all this propaganda, Chinese people dropping like flies, body bags everywhere, and then it's all gone like that. You can't find it anymore. What happened to all of that?
Indeed. Rebecca Reid, I'm fascinated to come to you about this, actually, because you never were bothered by lockdowns, were you? You sort of quite liked them, and you never got worked up like Calvin did or like I
mean,
did.
I think I just did the sensible thing, and I followed what I felt was a safe course of action and did what I felt I should do.
So looking back now and seeing the unnecessary damage that lockdowns have caused, and now that you know that COVID was never going to pose you and the vast majority of the population a serious risk.
We didn't know that at the time.
Do you feel differently about lockdowns now?
I still feel really surprised that people blindly followed it. I find it very surprising that other people weren't also seeing a couple of friends every now and again and interpreting the rules that felt comfortable to them. I think it's almost worrying that we will do as we're told without questioning it. I would say it's really easy now to look back and be like, OK, listen, it wasn't actually as scary as we thought it was. It was new to everybody, and it was terrifying at the beginning, and I think a lot of us felt genuinely frightened
because
at the
they
beginning.
terrified us.
No, it was because it was unknown, and there have been previous pandemics and epidemics where the response has been under what it needed to be, and that's been really dangerous.
But the facts
the
were
HIV
there.
pandemic, Ebola, all of those are examples.
But the facts were always there. I'm sorry, I just want to be clear on this. The facts were always there that COVID was nothing like Ebola and nothing like the HIV/AIDS.
OK, what would you do if
we did know. We actually did know. This is the thing. So Matthew Schellenberger has exposed that we did know because the US funded the research, the gain-of-function research into COVID in the Wuhan lab. This is all, we have all the evidence now, so we did know.
Lots of people did get fairly ill.
I mean, how about it twice?
Your question.
In his words, the next time anything like this happens, we'll have an even more ferocious lockdown. What would you do if the Prime Minister of the time stood up and said, as Boris did, I would defy...
Lock me
I
up.
would be dancing in the streets.
Lock me up before you lock me in my house
I would be
again.
finding someone to snog in the street.
Why didn't people do that at the time? I did. What if you didn't think it was a good idea? Why didn't you just break the rules? That's what I find really confusing.
Because they terrified us. They absolutely terrified us, and they turned us into a police state.
I think maybe we all need to take more responsibility for what it is that we consume.
Never again.
OK, now look, moving on, according to ITV Insiders, Holly Willoughby skipped the Trick Awards today to avoid a face-to-face encounter with one of her ex-colleagues, the brilliant Eamon Holmes, who, as we heard earlier, won with his GB News breakfast show. This morning was nominated for an award, despite the Philip Schofield scandal laying bare the toxic culture at the show. And it's fair to say Holly will not be regretting her decision. I was actually at the Love You Do earlier, and this morning received a frosty reception from the audience, with some even booing the show. But the humiliation didn't stop there, as it was sensationally beaten by Channel 4's long-running lifestyle programme, A Place in the Sun, to Best Daytime Show, even though Holly and Phil won last year. Here's what happened.
Escape to the Country, Father Brown, and This Morning. And the winner of the OK Daytime is A Place in the Sun.
Awkward, even Loose Women star Judy Love made a joke about all the drama on This Morning while co-hosting The Gongs. Ouch. Rebecca Reed, Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel, do stand by, because coming up, as champagne socialist Gary Neville joins Lineker on the BBC after it's announced he'll appear on Dragon's Den. Have the woke beeb now given up presenting itself as an impartial broadcaster? We'll tackle that one in the media buzz. But next, as the coroner in the Nicola Bulley inquest rules that she died by accidentally drowning, investigative journalist and former police officer Mark Williams-Thomas gives his expert analysis and offers his view on whether Lancashire police still have questions to answer over their handling of the case. Mark Williams-Thomas live with important news straight after this. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
At Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Esteemed royal biographer Tom Bower joins me soon with a bombshell revelation on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But breaking tonight, the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has reached a conclusion with the coroner ruling that she did not have any intention to take her own life and died an accidental death. This follows yesterday's revelation that Nicola had not been drinking when she drowned in the River Wyre. And earlier, her partner Paul Ansell told the inquest that she was, quote, full of beans on the night before her death. It was back in February that the disappearance gripped the nation, and today her bereaved family accepted the coroner's ruling and paid tribute to the person they knew as Nikki.
The last few months have been extremely tough to process for our family. The emotional impact will stay long in our hearts, and whilst we'll never forget the loss of our Nikki, we will forever remember her as the brilliant mum, partner, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much.
I'm joined now by investigative journalist and former police officer Mark Williams-Thomas, who was in attendance at the inquest. So, Mark, with your expertise, did you agree with the verdict given by the coroner today? And are there questions for the police to answer in their handling of Nicola Bulley's disappearance?
Good evening, Dan. Yes, I mean, I do agree with the coroner's verdict. The coroner had information which led him only really to one conclusion, which was that it was an accidental death. There's no way that he could determine that there was any intention for her to kill herself in any way. So his option really was accident. It still leaves lots of questions. And this is the problem that exists when you have something like this. You have a finding of fact. So the coroner is really responsible for asking the questions. If he doesn't ask all the questions, then you won't necessarily get all the answers that allay the concerns of the public. This is a case that has absolutely, captivated worldwide, not just in the UK, across social media, across the many platforms, with people all having different views. I think what we are in a position now, for the family, we have to get to a position we say, do you know what, end of this case, let's put closure on it. Let the family now mourn in the way that they are. They've got some answers. They haven't got all the answers that they require, but ultimately, we're not going to know. The key question is, where did she go into the water? We now know she definitely went into the water. She definitely drowned in the water. What we don't know is what point she went in the water, and some of the questions in relation to how she could have fallen into the water right by the edge and become unconscious, and then go travel some 150 yards down towards where the weir is and then across the weir. Those just haven't been answered.
No.
But sadly, there is nobody else that can answer those questions.
Well, is that correct, though, Mark? Because what about this mysterious man in black who, having been identified and mentioned again at the inquest, has still not been discovered? What did we learn about him? And could he have been involved?
It was very strange yesterday when suddenly one of the witnesses mentioned this individual who they themselves thought was suspicious, which is why they contacted the police. I would have expected and would have hoped that the coroner would have asked the police, called the police back, or at least asked the question, bearing in mind the coroner knew a lot of this information prior to being in the hearing. It wasn't suddenly revealed to him on that day. Why we didn't get that answered? And actually, it just adds to this whole element of some of these answers just haven't been given. I'm not a fan of Lancashire Police. I think Lancashire Police have made a real mess, certainly of the media aspect of it. But they've made a big mess in terms of their communication process. The public now are going, well, who is this person in black? The Lancashire Police should come out and say, well, we tried to identify it was, we made these inquiries, we made these inquiries. We don't know. And for the conspiracy theories and for those people who just aren't happy that this is the right outcome, it leaves that on the table. And indeed, even for Nikki's family and friends who might at times have slight doubts in terms of what took place, they'll still be asking questions. Well, who is this man in black?
Yeah, totally, because we were when we were looking at the details of the inquest today. I guess the positive things, though, are for Nicola Bulley's family, although I do not think this make the police looks at all good, is that what we can categorically say now, Mark, is that she had no alcohol in her body. So alcohol was not involved, despite those disgusting slurs that the police made public at the time to take the heat off them, and I think that was unforgivable. And it wasn't a suicide. So for her husband and for the future of those two daughters, that is very important, even though some mystery still shrouds how she ended up in that river.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Lancashire Police were completely wrong when they released that information. I would have liked it after the post-mortem for them to have come out and said there was no alcohol found in the body. Let's dispel that straight away. And actually they didn't. And they allowed that thought process still to continue on social media. So in reflection, and the police college have looked at this in terms of the media strategy. I hope Lancashire Police learn massively from this. But of course, what we are in a position now is that Paul and the rest of the family, the children and the mum and dad have now got some answers. They haven't got all the answers. Unfortunately, what happens in cases like this is that we try to apply logic to it. And sometimes logic just doesn't give us the answers that we're looking for. And events just occur as a matter of occurrence. So it is a very sad situation. how she ended up in that water, how she ended up in a position where she was in that water and then travelled downstream. We will just never know the answers to that. But Lancashire Police hopefully have learned something from this. I really would have liked Lancashire Police to have held their hands up and said, you know what, we didn't get everything right. We're really sorry. Our thoughts are with the family. But actually, Lancashire Police, throughout all of this, have never accepted any failings, never accepted it that they got it slightly wrong. I think they could have been much more humble through this process. They should certainly have dispelled very quickly after the post-mortem that there was no alcohol in her body, having put the slur out that they did. Let's hope, moving forward, we can now put this to bed, let the family mourn in their way that they need to, and Lancashire Police have learned their lessons from it. And although they haven't publicly said it, hopefully within the organisation there is a little bit of humility.
Well, Mark Williams-Thomas, thank you for your brilliantly accurate and incise coverage over the course of the disappearance of Nicola Bulley. You didn't fall into the traps that so many others did, covering what is a tragedy that captured not just the nation but the world. Thank you so much, Mark. But coming up in Uncancelled, with Netflix demanding more from Harry and Meghan after Spotify dropped the calamitous couple, have they lost their way? Now they've given up bashing the royal family. Our esteemed royal biographer Tom Bauer joins me live in the studio shortly. But next, in the media buzz, with Labour lovey Gary Neville due to appear on the BBC's Dragon's Den just months after the Gary Lineker debacle, has the state broadcaster killed off any pretence of impartiality? Plus, do Lancashire Police owe Nicola Bulley's family an apology for their handling of the case? My superstar panel tackle both of those very important stories, plus more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, so don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. More front pages are in my hot little hands. Straight to them. The Daily Mirror takes the same quote from Matt Hancock before hitting back, saying, "Sorry is not enough," as grieving families turn their backs to the disgraced former health secretary at today's COVID-19 inquiry, with one heard to shout, "Killer." The Daily Mail reports that consultants on over £100,000 have voted for a 48-hour strike. That will come after 5 days of stoppages by junior doctors, plunging the NHS into 7 days of chaos. And a fascinating exclusive there from Sarah Vine, revealing she had her breasts groped at number 10 Downing Street by Harry Enfield. Obviously, that follows on the back of that gutless little weasel, Daniel Korski. Did he show up? Did he show up for his pre-agreed interview? No, he didn't. What a gutless little weasel. And London has been protected. Amanda Patel. Amanda Patel. Calvin Robinson. Rebecca Reid. Let's hope he's stopped that sort of funny business, right? But Daniel Korski, honestly, you've not actually just let yourself down. You've let the GB News viewers down. And that is what is unacceptable. Now, surely BBC bosses must know that the only thing worse than having one lefty loudmouth Gary on the books would be to have two. But those woke execs just can't help themselves. Announced today, former footballer turned London-loving property mogul Gary Neville will be joining the long-running business show Dragon's Den. Already in the lineup is the rabid anti-Brexit campaigner Deborah Meaden, and now they've added Neville, who is campaigning to make Keir Starmer the next Prime Minister. And of course, this comes just months after Gary Lineker put two fingers up to BBC bosses after he was suspended in an impartiality storm. So, Calvin Robinson, you believe the BBC should be defunded. Okay. The reality is here that they just wouldn't do it if we were talking about high-profile folk on the right.
And Gary Neville's a funny one because he's always moralising, except when it doesn't suit him. You know, when he went off to Qatar, where they literally killed people for being gay, he was
that's fine.
Fully behind it. Yeah,
Exactly.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Taking the coin.
But the thing that gets me is the hoops that we have to go through. If I want to talk about, for example, trans, I have to make sure I've got someone who's got the opposite opinion of me. I've got to get all this balance, impartiality. I was listening to Radio 5 on the way down, not out of choice. My Uber driver had it on the other day. And they had and everyone's agreeing with each other. They're all on the same page. There's no impartiality, there's no balance. They don't have to go through the same hoops that we have to go through. But our viewers have to pay the BBC in order to watch our channel.
Yeah. It's a joke, isn't it, Amanda Patel?
It's a complete joke. And Gary Neville is a complete and utter hypocrite out there, and as you say, in Qatar, taking the coin and then making the comparison between people working for slave wages there, comparing them with nurses, when in fact, if you have a look online, the number of complaints from the people who work at his hotel, where they're paid the minimum wage, they're not paid overtime. They said they get the most appalling treatment. I wrote down some of the quotes. They said they're treated like slaves.
What, a champagne socialist? Being a hypocrite, Amanda? Knock me down with a feather. Rebecca Reid, it's just time to defund this organisation. Just accept the BBC, they only want to put woke lefty lovies on screen.
Is Alan Sugar a woke lefty lefty?
OK, any other example?
All of the...
No, seriously, any other example?
Dragon's Den. Who's the guy who owns the department store?
No, I don't know.
You do know. What's
got no idea.
What's it called?
Look, you can't come up with one other example other than Alan Sugar, who, by the way, let's just remember when. No, I'm going to make a really important point. Just hear me out.
We decide
Alan Sugar, until Jeremy Corbyn became Labour leader, supported the Labour Party.
Yeah, and has stayed as the flagship of The Apprentice for the 5-6 years since then. My point is, the
he was hired when he was on the
BBC
left.
impartiality shouldn't be about people who are presenting a cooking show. You can't expect that every single person who appears on the BBC has no political agenda. That's not realistic. Clever, creative people...
But why would someone like Nigel Farage never be asked to do Dragon's Den?
However, because Nigel Farage doesn't have any business track record.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, but don't you think...
Compared
Yeah, and what's Gary Neville's? He runs a hotel where people say they're treated appallingly.
My point is, if I can finish, that there is a big difference between someone like Laura Kuenssberg, who should be politically neutral, who is, or any of them, anybody who's presenting a political programme, absolutely should not be.
Well, I think we just need to see the choice of Laura Kuenssberg's guests week after week to see that there's no impartiality there. Look at Ben Alton at the weekend; that was a disgrace.
I'm willing to accept that, but the majority of creative people in this country are left-wing. The majority of people who are appropriate to be in a lot of these shows are left-wing.
That is so not true.
It's true.
Rebecca, that is...
It's fundamentally
I love you
true.
dearly, but that is like the most wrong...
Rebecca, look at how many brilliant comedians follow us on headliners every single night.
From the whole
and when are they ever asked on the BBC? But look, I want to move on to the very sad news of the day, as we discussed earlier with Mark Williams-Thomas. The inquiry into Nicola Bulley has revealed her death was an accident and there was no evidence she intended to take her own life. Now, the inquest has also found she was sober when she went into the water, which raises serious questions about Lancashire Police's handling of the case. You'll remember Detective Superintendent Rebecca Smith, who led the investigation earlier this year, came under fire after they inappropriately revealed that Nicola had significant issues with alcohol. That was their exact quote, and problems with the menopause. Now, Amanda, you were very critical of Rebecca Smith at the time. Do you feel like the findings of the inquest have now vindicated what you had to say, given that there was no alcohol in Nicola Bulley's body?
I think this is a really, really serious issue for every single woman in this country. I mean, the cops have not covered themselves in glory. I'm not going to talk about a dress or anything like that. Rebecca Smith, Detective Superintendent, needs to be called out. How dare she reveal a woman's HRT state, her menopausal state, what she claims is her alcohol dependency. The doctor who gave evidence in the inquiry today, in the inquest, she said she was never suicidal. She had a little blip when she got her HRT wrong, which anyway, you're much too young. Just points at me when you're looking at older women. Unsisterly, Rebecca.
I said it happens to all women.
HRT, it's a balance. You go through a really difficult time during the menopause. That information should never have been revealed.
Because it had nothing to do with her disappearance.
No, but it should never have been revealed, and it contradicted what the doctor said, that she was never suicidal, which was what they were implying. And I think that it is Rebecca Smith should damn well apologise for what she did, because the most important thing is, as we all know here on this sofa, that everything that goes into the ether, into social media, that woman, that cop, branded Becky, Nicola, they branded her a substance abuser and a person who is depressed, maybe even suicidal.
Exactly.
And those are two little girls of hers. This is the important point, Dan. Those two young daughters of hers, every time they go into the playground now, it will be people whispering behind their hands, her mum was a drunk. How dare? And that a woman would do that to another woman.
Well, hopefully that changes after the inquest.
Upsets me
but I
so
do
much.
think what's so disgusting, Rebecca, is the police have tried to divert all of the attention to social media sleuths, when the reality is it was the police that made this information public.
I mean, look, I don't think many people behave well in this. It's true that there were some pretty disgusting people on the internet treating it like entertainment, and it's true that Kay Burley segment where she sort of like mocked it.
Oh, that was disgraceful.
That was honestly chillingly horrible. However, those are not people who were employed to solve this. The police were the people whose job it was to try and handle this appropriately, and they didn't. And I think they really contributed to this narrative that it was basically like another Gone Girl. They turned it into a story, basically.
And they turned it into something, and you know, they sully that woman's reputation.
Yeah, I write thrillers, and this is the exact kind of thing that you do to kind of make a character more compelling.
Calvin Robinson?
I just think they shouldn't be releasing personal information that's not pertinent to the case, and I think I'm losing faith in the police, actually. More on this later.
Should we defund them?
We shouldn't defund them. We need police, but we should have higher standards for them. You know, in the last 24 hours, the Met Police have been promoting Pride, which is obviously ideologically political, and they've been endorsing people like Peter Tatchell, who have questionable moral stances on underage sex and these kind of things. I have very little faith in the Met Police right now.
Can I just add one last thing? You know, this has been 2 days of this inquest. It's been very important information. Can we just all remember Nicola Bulley as a beautiful young mum with 2 gorgeous daughters in a happy relationship, and remember her as a woman who had a terrible accident, but she was a beautiful human being.
She was.
But may she rest in
And
peace.
she should not be... Yeah.
Indeed, and I agree with all of that. I will just make one point. It's so important. When the police knew she had no alcohol in her system was after the post-mortem. That was months ago.
I know.
And why did they not release that information? I think it's disgraceful.
And the inquiry into this detective superintendent Rebecca Smith, that whole inquiry into her behaviour, it's been given a clean bill of health.
Final word, Rebecca.
If Calvin and I both agree that the police are failing, admittedly for different reasons, 2 people who couldn't be more ideologically opposed in most ways, that is something is wrong.
Indeed, although as Amanda says, and we do need to point it out as a legal note, Lancashire police were investigated by 2 separate watchdogs and were cleared of misconduct.
Well, that's incredibly disappointing, I think.
Now, Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel, stand by, because coming up as GB News presenter Nigel Farage topples the media establishment at the Trick Awards, just like Brexit, the MSM's lefty lovies couldn't accept the result. And so after their disdain for you, the voting viewers, couldn't be clearer, has the broadcast industry shown itself to be severely out of touch? We'll address that as we reveal the nominees for tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But up next in Uncancelled, with Harry and Meghan's stateside dream crumbling around them, has the couple been found out by the US media? Plus, could the spirit of the late Princess Diana be guiding the couple? There's a fresh Tom Bauer bombshell on the way in just 2 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the people's channel. Britain is watching.
Time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And Harry and Meghan's media ambitions in the States rapidly crumbling, with that multi-million-dollar Spotify contract cut short, and the Wall Street Journal exposing them for achieving more cancellations and rejections than produced shows. Now, this has prompted a Netflix source to brief today that they will continue to work together on a number of projects with Harry and Meghan, which they may be forced to, with the mega money contract running out until 2025. But it could mark the end of the line after that. A Hollywood source has told me Netflix wants out too. They are envious the Spotify exit could come so quickly. The contract with Harry and Meghan hasn't delivered. It's been a nightmare to navigate from start to finish. So esteemed choreographer Tom Bauer with me now. And Tom, it almost feels like Harry and Meghan have been rumbled by Hollywood.
Well, absolutely. They seem to be. This week's news has been a disaster for them. It's absolutely extraordinary how last week we thought, well, they haven't got any talent, and what are they going to do? And suddenly the whole of Hollywood is saying they don't have any talent. They've woken up to it. And this week, I think what we're discovering, and I think Hollywood will then follow on as well, is that they're hurtling towards the precipice. I mean, they really are now battling for survival. Brand Sussex has been so damaged this week by all the attacks in America that it's very hard to see how they're going to find an escape.
But you think she's going to become an influencer again and relaunch the
Well,
tea?
what's so interesting is this week I heard this extraordinary story, which I'm sure is true because it came from Harry's lips, that Harry told a friend of his when he was in London recently that Meghan is in touch with Diana. And that Diana is assuring...
Princess Diana,
the mother. And that Meghan is assuring Harry that his mother is absolutely sure that what they're doing is right. And she supports them absolutely in everything they're doing. And Harry told this story to my source in absolute seriousness. He really does believe that Meghan is talking to Diana, his mother. And so...
And she's letting him think that.
Well, clearly.
Meghan's letting Harry think that.
Clearly. I mean, is it an act? Does she really think that she's in touch with Diana beyond the grave? It's absolutely astonishing. But the truth is that you've got these two individuals now, with Harry living a life of complete and utter fantasy and in denial that he actually is a talentless, very uneducated fellow who thinks his future is to ask President Putin whether he suffered from childhood trauma and asking the Pope, what about religion, Mr. Pope? And Meghan, who has kept her silence, who this week was hugely humiliated. No Dior contract, Spotify off as we predicted, Netflix problems as we predicted. Where's she going to go? Now she's been called a grifter. It's all very difficult, yet they clearly are on two different planets, and that's what's so interesting.
But it's what Diana would have wanted. That's what he claims. I mean, it's hard to believe Diana would ever have wanted him to treat William in the way that he has, for example.
Absolutely, but he needs reassurance. And Meghan has found the perfect vehicle to reassure him that all is well by telling him that his mother approves of everything that's been done.
But isn't it a fascinating contrast what's happened this week, though, Tom? Because you actually have William, and look, some people have criticised his homelessness project because they think it's him veering too much into the political arena. But that is actually certainly a project that Diana would have wholeheartedly supported, and it's actually something practical that isn't about himself.
And it advances the cause. And one of the issues which the Sussexes claimed when they went to California in search of privacy was that they were going to do good for the world. And all they've really done is a lot of damage.
And
in the process of
you didn't need to be in the royal family to do public service, according to them.
Exactly.
But they're disproving that, aren't they?
They've done it brilliantly.
Now, you're hearing some interesting developments in terms of Prince Harry's court case versus Mirror Group newspapers.
Yeah, and as I said to you some weeks ago, we're all thinking Harry can't win the case because he hasn't produced any evidence against the Mirror of hacking in any of the 30-odd stories they produced in court. But what was very important today was that the Mirror's KC, their representative, urged the judge not to give more than £500 damages in any of the 30 instances. And what he was really saying was that he realised that the judge is going to find one of the cases against the Mirror Group because no member of the royal family has ever lost in a British court, as we saw with Meghan, which was absolutely outrageous when she got away with it against the Mail on Sunday.
Didn't even go to trial.
No, the judges refused a trial and excused her for giving an inaccurate statement, which we would call a lie. Now, in this case, I don't think the judge is going to allow Harry to be completely humiliated. He'll look for one case, one example, where he can say the Mirror might have been involved in some unauthorised activity. Now, the issue then is how much the damage is. If he only gives 500, the reason why the case he mentioned 500 is because the Mirror has clearly paid into court, which actually reduces to nothing the costs and puts the burden on Harry. But it's exactly as I feared, that actually, in the end, the royals get privileged treatment in the courts.
Well, of
and
course.
The truth suffers.
And it also propels this deranged campaign that he's taking against what I think is freedom of the press in the
Well,
UK.
we hope that the judge will modify the way in which he delivers the verdict, and perhaps still there may be total vindication. But the trouble is, of course, the Mirror is damaged goods on this issue. But what we're really faced with is that the Sussexes tonight and this week in California are facing so many problems, so many challenges, so much derision, so much mocking of themselves that it's very hard to see how they can sustain their money-making careers for much longer.
Well, indeed. And, of course, a loss versus the Mirror would be utterly catastrophic.
Financially, especially, and in reputational, too.
Well, fascinating stuff. Another Bauer bombshell. You've done it again. Tom Bauer, top royal biographer. We will speak next week. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Straight to my superstar panel. Amanda Patel, who are you nominating as your Greatest Brit tonight?
OK, say what you like about Fergie, the Duchess of York, and I have in the past. I think that what she's done this week, coming out and saying that she had absolutely no signs of breast cancer, had a mammogram and tested positive and has now had a mastectomy, is really, really brave thing to do, and good on her, and message...
Yeah, should we have a little listen to her?
We're actually taping the podcast today, but tomorrow, it's because tomorrow I'm going in for a mastectomy. Yeah. And not a single mastectomy, but it's very important that I speak about it.
Calvin Robinson, your Greatest Britain nominee.
GB News. I want to congratulate our colleagues on winning 2 awards at Metrics.
That is so crawly. That is so crawly. Don't give it to him.
Do you not want to congratulate our colleagues?
Yeah, I do, but that's really crawly.
I mean, we didn't.
What's crawly? What's crawly in English, Amanda?
That's sucky-uppy.
That's not a word either.
And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
Mine is Daisy Goodwin, who is the TV producer who came out and said that Daniel Korski had allegedly groped her, and I think it's an incredibly brave thing to do. She's a very successful, very together person who had nothing to gain from this other than pointing out that he's a wrong un, probably.
Yeah, Daisy's great, actually. And that Daniel Korski is a slippery, gutless little weasel because he's meant to be here right now doing an interview with us where he could have denied it, but he's refused to do that. He's refused to speak to you, and I think he's now finished when it comes to the London mayoralty anyway. But look, of course it's going to be Calvin Robinson, but not because we're just blowing our own trumpet here at GB News, because I actually think it's so important the way that the lovies in the room treated Nigel Farage on stage today. They were showing contempt for you as GB News viewers. Amanda Patel, your Union Jackass nominee, please.
OK, I'm going to nominate everyone who was responsible in the Lancashire Police for revealing Nicola Bulley's private details. Should never have happened, her medical history, whatever, and it should never happen again, and they should hang their heads in shame.
Yes, and of course, Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Smith is the woman
Rebecca
who
Smith,
you
can we say that?
targeted earlier. You targeted her earlier in the show, didn't you? Calvin Robinson, your Union Jackass nominee.
Mine is the Metropolitan Police for pushing the LGBTQ+ agenda, which is divisive, political, and should be nowhere near the police force, but also for endorsing Peter Tatchell, who has very questionable views on underage sex.
And Rebecca Reid, your Union Jackass nominee.
Mine's Matt Hancock, which is a perennial favourite. But particularly, I was just really struck by this constant repetition about, I don't like to talk about my feelings, but I will talk about the fact that I fell in love while I have left my wife and I have children. It's just so gauchely handled. His desire to be famous is just agonising and embarrassing.
Fornicator, adulterer.
I have to say, of course, it's Matt Hancock, today's Union Jackass. Great choice, Rebecca. I thought his performance today, and by the way, I use that word purposefully. It was a performance. This is not the real Hancock that you're seeing. As Rebecca says, he claims that he doesn't want to talk about his feelings. What absolute rubbish. That's all he's done. He's trying to manipulate the inquiry. He's trying to manipulate you. He's going to be called to account, I hope, over the next couple of years. But the guy, as Calvin says, is a slippery snake, so we have to be very conscious to keep track of all of his lies, and it was a massive lie today to say he doesn't like talking about his emotions. That's all he's done for the past couple of years. Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reid and Amanda Patel, my superstar panel, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. We've got lots, including Jim Davidson and Angela Leff. And next up, though, it's headliners. Good night. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you with GB News. Our top story, some breaking news. A man has been charged with the murder of Sarah Henshaw, whose body was found in a lay-by near the M1 yesterday. Derbyshire police are saying the suspect is 36-year-old Darren Hall. Sarah Henshaw's body was discovered just after midnight yesterday, close to junction 29 of the motorway. The 31-year-old mother of 2 was last seen at her home address in Ilkeston last Tuesday. Her mother has described her as a wonderful daughter and sister. That news just into us in the last half.